What would you do if you heard a knock on your door right now? Let's pretend you get up to go answer it. You turn the lock only to discover the mayor of your town standing at your doorstep. He charges in, proclaiming that this is his house now. And after spending a moment in stunned silence, a flurry of questions starts running through your mind. How is this happening? Why is he here? And what am I going to do about it? This scenario gives you just a little taste of the unimaginable challenges that Boudica faced in her lifetime. A Celtic queen from the 1st century, her husband's death left her tribe open for the taking for one of the world's greatest superpowers, the Roman Empire. It wasn't enough for Rome to simply take her lands. No, the imperial military set out on a mission to humiliate, defile, and break Boudica and her people. What historical figures choose to do in these seemingly impossible circumstances reveals a lot about their character and can teach us some valuable lessons even today. This is the story of Boudica, a warrior queen whose hunger for vengeance turned her into the ultimate shadow huntress, reminding us what happens when feminine drive is rooted in injury instead of alignment. Hey guys, it's Gata and welcome to my channel. This is my corner of the internet where I like to talk about feminine psychology, famous faces, and the archetypal patterns that shape the way we move through the world. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in hearing more about, I invite you to pull up a chair and join the conversation. I'd love to have you. A quick note before we dive in. Boudica's story takes place during ancient history. During that time period, lots of tribal communities, including Boudica's, didn't keep written historical records. Instead, much of what we know about her story comes from two main Roman historians, Tacitus and Cassius Dio. Tacitus wrote about Boudica several decades after her revolt, drawing from the account of his father-in-law, who was serving in the Roman military in Britain during the time. Cassius Dio wrote about the events over a century later. While his version is longer and more dramatic, it's also further removed from the source material. As with so much of ancient history, there are some key places where these two accounts disagree. I also think it's important to remember that both of these men were writing their accounts from the perspective of the Roman Empire. You know, the same one Boudica was hell-bent on destroying. So, rather than trying to reconstruct every detail with complete certainty that, frankly, we just don't have, I'm going to explore the parts of Boudica's story that are consistently supported by our sources, and that best illuminate the psychological principles we're going to be talking about today. Because while some historical details remain unclear, one thing is undeniable. Boudica was a real woman who experienced profound loss, unimaginable tragedy, and left an indelible mark on history. This isn't going to be a comprehensive overview of the life and times of Boudica. No, on this channel, I'm much more interested in diving into what may have been happening beneath the surface. That's the journey I want to take you on today. So without further ado, let's get started. Boudica was born sometime in the beginning of the 1st century, a part of the Celtic Iceni tribe, located in the eastern part of Britain, encompassing modern-day Norfolk as well as parts of Suffolk and Cambridgeshire. Boudica's husband, Prasutagus, ruled the Iceni tribe under the authority of Rome. It was very much a Game of Thrones, King of the North kind of situation. In exchange for officially surrendering his land to Rome, Prasutagus was able to continue governing the kingdom with relative independence. But all of that changed upon his death. In his will, Prasutagus named his 2 young daughters, as well as the Roman Emperor Nero, as the heirs to his throne. Prasutagus's intentions seem pretty obvious here. He left the throne to his daughters, intending for them to continue ruling Iceni while maintaining their allyship with Rome. But the king was dead, and the emperor had other plans. It wasn't long after Prasutagus's death before the tides took a dramatic turn in Iceni. Roman forces quickly made their way into the region, ransacking homes, pillaging villages, and generally causing chaos everywhere they went. Their goal was simple: absorb the kingdom of Iceni into the Roman province of Britannia, extracting every resource they could along the way. Boudica sat in her home, heart racing, palms sweaty, terrified. This had not been part of the plan. What would become of her, of her children? Before we discuss that further, I want to give 2 brief disclaimers. The first is that we've come to one of the key points where Tacitus and Cassius Dio's account of events diverge. Both men offer very different motivations for Boudica's later rampage. I'm going to present both of them to you now so that you can draw your own conclusions. The second, and this is the one that I really want you to pay attention to, is that this next portion of the video is going to make mention of intimate violence against the women in this story. As always, I'm not going to be going into any of the specific details, and you can jump ahead to the timestamp below if this is a portion of the conversation you'd prefer to skip. However, this is a key part of Boudica's story that I really have to address. Because despite the carnage she would go on to inflict on the Roman forces, and believe me, she showed no mercy, I think most of us can understand the urge for revenge that Boudica must have felt given everything that she was about to endure alongside her daughters. So, the Roman forces eventually make their way to Boudica's home, and they recognize they need to do something to undermine the last surviving members of Pursuticus' line. They had to assert their dominance, show that resistance to the Roman forces was futile. After all that was left of the Iceni royals was the queen and the 2 princesses. And what threat did they pose to Rome? But still, they had to be sure, had to follow through in snuffing out that last bit of hope that the Iceni people had for regaining control of their kingdom. In Tacitus's account, they went on to assert their dominance in the way that men have done to women for millennia. Boudica was publicly flogged, injured, and humiliated for all her people to see. Both of her young daughters intimately violated. They didn't just want to overtake these women. They wanted to destroy the essence of who they were. Cassius Dio gives a very different account of the events, citing Roman recall of a loan as the primary reason for Boudica's ire. I'm gonna let you be the judge of what you think happened there. But wherever you land, both historians agree on one thing. Whatever violation the Romans committed against Boudica and her family, it lit a fire inside of her. If they would have just left her alone, there's every reason to believe that she wouldn't have done anything. Sure, maybe she would have tried holding onto her husband's throne for a little bit longer, but I think it's equally likely that she may have given up the fight in the interest of keeping peace. But in torturing Boudica and her children, they gave her a reason to be mad, angry, vengeful. In brutalizing them, the Roman military gave her a just cause, an indignation, a vendetta, and a purpose. Because from that moment on, Boudica was determined to hurt the Roman Empire the way they had hurt her. And she didn't just want them to suffer. She wanted them to burn. Boudica's determination to avenge her family has Huntress written all over it. As a reminder, the Huntress archetype is all about targeted action and achievement. She is single-mindedly focused on her goal, whatever that might be. In our modern day, the Huntress archetype is often embodied by women seeking higher education or career advancement or a special cause or philanthropic venture. When undergone from a healthy, aligned place, the Huntress is a dynamo, ambitious and determined, independent and unbothered. But the shadow side of the Huntress embodies these characteristics in a very different way. The Shadow Huntress takes determination and turns it into ruthlessness. Independence becomes isolation. Passion morphs into cruelty. Because the Huntress is amazing at achieving, but if she's not striving to achieve from a grounded, thoughtful, and considerate place, things can go terribly wrong. When the Huntress's target is grounded in injury, resentment, or revenge, it usually doesn't impact her ability to hit her mark. On the contrary, the Huntress is determined to win at all costs. And that's the problem. Because the Shadow Huntress can still be incredibly capable. She can still accomplish remarkable things. Her problem isn't competence, it's direction. Because even when a target is misaligned or toxic or harmful to others, the Huntress will pursue it regardless of the lasting impact on herself, on her circumstances, or on anyone with the misfortune of standing in her way. And unfortunately for the Romans, our shadowy huntress Boudica had her sights locked straight on them. It didn't take long for Boudica to call out to her bannermen, to reach out to her tribe and their allies to fight back against the empire that had taken so much from them. Cassius Dio, true to form, attributes a rousing, dramatic speech to Boudica, imploring her countrymen to rise up for their liberty. In the speech, she highlights that the Iceni have effectively been enslaved by Rome, with its people toiling day in and day out, not for themselves, but for the glory of an invading emperor. Again, we have to keep in mind that this is Cassius Dio we're talking about, our dramatic historian who's filling in the blanks over 100 years after the fact, kind of like I do on this channel. But regardless of the historical accuracy, Boudica's speech sounds good, damn good, and it makes sense given the context of everything else we know about her. Whatever was actually said on that fateful day, one thing is certain. Boudica had ignited the flicker of rebellion in her people, and she herself would be the one to lead them in their bloody march for revenge. I'm gonna level with you for a second. Military history is not my thing. So I'm not going to be focusing on battle tactics or military maneuvers in this video. Instead, I want to focus on the impact and the aftermath of Boudica's rampage, because I think that's where her Shadow Hunter side really shines through. The Boudican revolt led to the deaths of an estimated 70 to 80,000 Roman citizens. And this is a real quandary for me, because on the one hand, we're cheering Boudica on. In true Kill Bill fashion, Boudica is on a mission to destroy everyone and everything that's ever hurt her. And there's this feeling of justice there, like, yes, go get him, girl. But then you realize the magnitude of 80,000 people. And we're not talking about 80,000 soldiers that willingly went into battle. We're talking about 80,000 civilians, women, children. Not even the animals were spared. These were everyday citizens, just going about their normal lives. In his account of events, Tacitus makes it abundantly clear that Boudica and her people weren't plundering for resources. They weren't interested in pocketing valuables or taking prisoners. They were on a warpath to destroy, to annihilate, to burn it all to ash. In all, the Iceni forces, led by our ferocious warrior queen, leveled 3 Roman towns. Their destruction was so ruthless, so violent, and so complete that we actually have archaeological evidence of the carnage. As Boudica's forces made their way through the modern cities of Colchester, London, and St. Albans, they set everything in their sights ablaze. The fires burned so fiercely, with such intense heat, that to this day, there's a subterranean level below each of these 3 cities, containing the ash, scorched clay, and melted artifacts of their ancient destruction, the discarded, charred remnants of the Iceni invasion. They're still there. In some places, the remains are more than a meter deep. Both ancient and modern historians agree that the ferocity of this rebellion is notable. Sure, revolts have happened throughout all of human history, but this wasn't simply a case of one faction trying to regain their land or resources from a foreign invader. The Iceni weren't interested in taking anything from these Roman cities. Not valuables, not livestock, not even slaves. They weren't revolting for the sake of revolution. No, this was personal. This was for Boudica. Despite her numerous military victories, Boudica would not go on to regain control of her kingdom. And I think this echoes the experience that a lot of women have when they undertake a goal that's misaligned. Because the shadow side of the Huntress doesn't always impede your ability to hit your mark. Sometimes it's that she impedes your ability to choose the right mark. None of us would argue that Boudica's rage was unjustified. I think most of us struggle to understand how somebody could go on after enduring what she went through. But Boudica's blind rage made it impossible for her to step back and see the bigger picture. Because yes, she burned down the cities, but to what end? What was she actually trying to accomplish? She didn't want to rule these people, didn't want their land. Toward the end of her campaign, the main goal wasn't even getting her daughters back on the throne. It was about payback, about brutalizing the empire that had so horribly brutalized her and her children, about driving the foreign forces away from whatever she had left. And Boudica's legacy lives on today. Over time, she's become an icon for feminine power, anti-imperialism, and for the nation of Britain as a whole. But beneath that iconic symbol is the rubble under the city of London. The real people who were victims to Boudica's single-minded quest for vengeance. And while I hope none of you are planning on going on a rampage anytime soon, there's still a valuable lesson that we can learn from Boudica's conquest. And it's this: the Shadow Huntress doesn't fail because she lacks determination. She fails because determination can't fix the wrong target. For you, it won't be the decimation of a city, but it could be pursuing a career that looks impressive on the outside, but leaves you feeling drained and unfulfilled within. Continuing a friendship that's lasted a long time, but that dims you instead of lighting you up. Committing to a partner because it feels like the right step, instead of doing so from a place of love and devotion. By locking into the wrong target, you could be setting yourself up for a life that feels like a sentence, a trap that you find yourself desperately trying to escape down the line. Not because you didn't achieve your goal, but because it wasn't the right goal to achieve. Boudica's story reminds us of the dangers of letting the Shadow Huntress take the reins of your life. But what happens when a woman embodies the Huntress archetype from a place of total spiritual alignment? In my next video, we're going to be exploring the lighter aspects of the Huntress archetype through one of history's most well-known lady warriors, Joan of Arc. If you've ever struggled with choosing the right target for yourself, I'd love to hear from you down below. How did the Shadow Huntress express itself in you? The more we talk about and reflect upon these patterns within ourselves, the better we can be the next time we take aim. If you're interested in hearing about the archetypal pattern in another legendary British queen, I think you're really going to enjoy my deep dive on Elizabeth I and the trap of the personal brand. So I'll see you over there, or I'll just catch you next time. Until then, take care of yourselves. Bye.